applauding while I arrange myself. What a pleasure for me too to sit here and just gaze at you.
Don't make me blush already. We're just starting.
But also to have this book, which is, how many people have it? The book. Oh, with you. Okay, so obviously already you've had fans, and I was looking around and said, how can I appropriately add to what Margaret's going to say? And then I found it in the Village Voice. Here's what they said about you, and I pictured this New York accent. The man thinks, breathes, and sleeps with the fishes. Obsessed like Ahab. He can cook nothing else. He's one of the world's best seafood chefs, and New York is lucky to have him. So are we, Eric Ripert.
Thank you very much.
So I want to get a little of the origin story. This will come as a shock to many, but you were born in France.
Yes, I don't have an accent, but I was born in France.
Sadly, Dad died when you were 11. Stepdad, you've spoken of this, very abusive. I think you told the New York Times he was a parasite. And you encouraged your mom to kick him out. This is part of the story. But you also speak of a mom who cooked elegant meals. It was a place where people gathered. So take that whole upbringing and where did you put that? How is that in the you we meet today?
Oof. Well, I was very lucky. I had two grandmothers, one from Provence, one from Italy, cooking soul food from their own culture. And on the weekend, I would go and, depending on the weekend, be with one or the other and have this fantastic, great food. And then my mother was obsessed with fine dining, and at the time, Nouvelle Cuisine, and in the 70s, when I was 5-6 years old, she would be inspired by Paul Bocuse and a generation of chefs that were coming up in France. And at home, I would eat lunch and dinner with a different tablecloth, different china pattern. They had a different wine. I couldn't drink the wine, but different wine on the table. And my mother would cook appetizer, main course, and dessert for lunch and dinner, and it would be different every lunch and dinner, every day of the week.
Yeah.
And I thought every kid in the world. I mean.
Let's just turn that off.
You have a question. I was eating the best food from my grandmothers and then my mother, and I had the passion for eating and for being in a kitchen. But 5 years old in a kitchen or 6 years old in a kitchen is not very practical. So I could only watch and eat. They didn't want me to touch anything. So I was not allowed to touch.
You could get hurt, actually.
Well, they didn't want to clean after me.
Oh.
That's why. But I developed that passion for eating and cooking at a very young age. And even when times were difficult at home, you mentioned that my stepfather was not really a good friend of mine. But when we were eating lunch and dinner, it was peace. We made peace, and it was very civilized until the end, and then we were starting the war again.
Well, food meant peace.
Yes,
and civility.
I strongly believe that.
Yeah, well, no surprise then that you go to culinary boarding school at 15,
Yes.
then work at one of the most storied restaurants in Paris, Le Tour d'Argent.
Yes.
Another, Jamin?
Jamin.
Jamin with Chef Joël Robuchon. You went right to the top in Paris.
Yes. So I went at 15 to culinary school because I was a bad student. And I was a bad student because instead of studying, I was reading cookbooks at night. So I couldn't have good grades. And at 15, the principal called me in office with my mom and said, look, the kid cannot go further. We have to find a vocational school. And I was like, yeah, culinary school. Culinary school, which I did.
Yeah.
And then when I graduated from culinary school, finally I was a good student. And when I graduated, I grabbed the Michelin guide, which was at the time in France the most important source for knowing about good restaurants. And it was 18 three-star Michelin, which is the highest ranking. And I wrote a letter to the 18 three-star restaurant, and I said, yeah, I'm Eric Ripert, I'm 17 years old, I just graduated, I want to come to your restaurant. Nobody answered. And then 2 months later, I received a letter from La Tour d'Argent in Paris, and they said, yeah, we may have something for you, call us at this number. So I called, and I had a discussion with the chef. And at the end, I said, when do I start? He said, tomorrow. I was living 1,000 miles from Paris. So I packed and went to Paris on my own and started in La Tour d'Argent in 1982. They were celebrating at that time their 400-year anniversary.
Wow.
It was something really special.
And then on to Chef Robuchon. Is it true that part of your job there was to make a meal for his dog every night?
Not quite.
That's a good story, you know?
But Joël Robuchon was considered one of the best chefs in Europe, in France, in the world, in the galaxy, anywhere you want. And he had a dog, a French poodle. And every day we were feeding the dog. And Mr. Robuchon, we call him Mr. Robuchon, or Chef Robuchon, was eating at home for dinner. So every day we were preparing the food for the dog. And it was a turn in between the cooks to prepare the meal of the dog. But the dog will never finish his meal. So we will receive a call from his house saying that we sabotaged the dinner of the dog. And that the meat was cut too small or too big, or it was always something about the dog. Yes. Famous for something else, but famous also for his cooking, because he was an exceptional chef and cook, extremely creative. It's in Boston. I mean, I know it is in Boston as well. Chefs first of all, we are in hospitality industry, and we want to make people happy. And also, we are very close because it's a very small world. Yes, we compete, but it's a very friendly competition. At the end of the day, we have this solidarity in between us. And anywhere I go, when I see chefs, right away it's friendship that is developing very quickly. And it's very simple also. When you sit down at a table and you share a meal with someone, suddenly something happens, something magical happens, a certain intimacy happens, you share something, you connect. That's the power of eating together, and especially if you are cooking together, it's even more powerful. So what that generation of chefs did, still today going on, and even the very new generation that comes into our field as professionals have this tremendous respect for the older guys like me now, and also are very close to each other and help each other.
Yeah. Well, you took from all the different chefs you worked with, and then of course, Le Bernardin. In 1991, you were working with Chef Gilbert Lecause.
Yes.
So sad. He died unexpectedly at 49. You're 29 at that time when he died. I think 2 years later you...
Yes, I'm 29, yes.
Yeah. He's a mentor. You know, I found myself thinking, your dad dies young, and then here's this mentor also dies young. And it's one of the best restaurants in the world. And 2 years later, you're the co-owner. 31. Terrified?
Yeah.
No. Well, first of all, when Gilbert Lecause passed away, it was very difficult emotionally for me, because he was a mentor, he was a dear friend, we were very close. I worked 3 years with him, and he gave me a lot of freedom to express myself. He wanted to have a chef de cuisine that was young, which was me at the time, and said, you know, I give you freedom to do whatever you want, just respect the philosophy of Le Bernardin, and then I will support you forever. So I was in control of his kitchen, and he was thinking about developing other restaurants at the time, and we opened Miami, which was a casual concept. And he was interested by that. He was done with the kitchen, basically. And I was operating the kitchen, I was creative in the kitchen, I was doing basically everything. So when he passed away, technically it was not too much of a big change, except that I missed him tremendously. Oh. And then we moved on, and I was fearless because I supposedly was a buzz in town that I was too young, I was going to lose the stars, I was going to not maintain the quality. I really didn't care. I was really, really focused and passionate about what I was doing. And it's only what I was thinking about. How can I make the food better today than yesterday, which is the same today actually. How can I make it better than yesterday? How can dinner be better than lunch? How can lunch tomorrow can be better than dinner, and so on. And by being focused like that, I totally ignore the buzz and what was going on outside. And I basically got rewarded at the end with a lot of support from our clients, a lot of support from the press, and moved on with Le Bernardin from those years until today.
And have maintained it as one of the best, if not some say the best restaurant in the world. But I want to ask how you might have evolved along the way, because now you are vocal about your disapproval of abusive chefs.
For sure.
There was a time when you acted through anger a lot. How did you, what was that? How did you change that?
So some of my mentors, I won't mention their name necessarily, but some of my mentors were very abusive. And that was the culture in France at the time. When I grew up in the 80s in a kitchen, the chef was glorified as a mini dictator, and anger was glorified as well, and abuse was glorified. And the young generation was going into those kitchens, and we were living in another dimension. We were living 2,000 years ago. We were being verbally abused, physically abused. They were punching us in the shoulders, kicking our butt, sometimes taking us in the coolers, the big fridge, and beating us and things like that. We were insulted the entire day, never a compliment, never anything like that. And it was normal. And also in France at the time, they really believed that that philosophy was going to hell. So they were taking young people, the idea was to break them psychologically and then rebuild them as champions. And it was the most stupid idea that I ever heard. I mean, we lost so much talent in that process. But anyway, I was conditioned to be angry and to think that I was right, because I was conditioned in those kitchens for years. So when I had my first position of authority in a kitchen, what did I do? I emulate my mentors. And I was throwing tantrums and plates on the floor when the food was not right, and was very verbally abusive, never violent physically. But I thought it was the right thing to do. And in my life, I was miserable. And I knew I was miserable because when I would close my eyes, I could see only ugly things. And if I would say I remember saying to myself after work at night in my sofa at home, try to envision a field of flowers, and I would close my eyes and I would see nothing but ugliness.
Ugliness.
And then the team was leaving, and the cooks were miserable. The ones that were staying with me were miserable. And then one night I had this wake up kind of moment, and I said,
"Is that French?"
I'm totally no. And I said, I'm wrong. This is not right. We have to change. And when you're young, you want to change immediately. So I came back the day after and I said, hey guys, we're changing everything. I'm so sorry, I apologize. But I had trained sous chefs for years to be abusive. And then it took me months to retrain them, because they were like, you nuts. Yesterday you tell us to be like this, now you change your mind. It took me some time, a little bit, but I have to say, a cook who's shaking like this will never do a better job than a cook that focus and joyful and happy and has the potential to blossom. Or any employee actually in a restaurant or anywhere actually. Someone who's not abused, doesn't have the fear, doesn't have the stress, will always do better for himself and for the people around him. And if it goes into the food, I guarantee you that the food will be better when you put love instead of fear into your food. I'm sorry, I want to finish because I have something to say. And then I see on television some programs now that are promoting verbal abuse, stupid attitude, and I'm not going to say, well, I'm going to say his name.
I was.
Right? I mean, Gordon Ramsay. What is he doing? What does he think he's doing? What is the production company behind him is doing? What is the TV network supporting that? What are they doing? They're crazy. But it's not the right thing to do. And each time I have an opportunity, I give it to Gordon.
Where did it impacted this?
Yes, when I was very, very young. I mean, when I started to come in America, I started to be interested. At the time, I came in 1989. In 1989, the Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama, got the Peace Nobel Prize. And I happened to read his speech of acceptance, was very inspired by it, and then started to read about Buddhism and Tibet and what was going on there, and study more, and it's a philosophy that really speaks to me. It has helped me to be a better person, to find inner peace, and today I really try to find a secular way to share with my team and the people that are close to me what I have learned. And I do it in a secular way because obviously I'm not trying to change their beliefs and so on. I'm not converting anyone, that's for sure. But it has been very positive for me.
What do they say? Attraction rather than promotion. So maybe they might be attracted to what you have found. And I am wondering if it helped you in the terrible time, we're just going to touch on it, Anthony Bourdain.
Yes. Well, Anthony and I were very good friends, as you know. And the friendship started when he wrote Kitchen Confidential. So that was in 2000 when the book came out. And everybody was speaking about, especially in the industry, about the book because supposedly he was trashing half of the industry and making fun of a lot of them and then glorifying some others. So one day one friend came to me and said, you know, your name is mentioned in that book many, many times. I was like, oh God. Wow. So that was forcing me to buy the book and read the book to make sure that he was saying nice things about me, just in case. And he had only compliments. He didn't know me, I never met him. So I grabbed the phone and I called him and I said, hi, I'm Eric Ripert and you wrote nice things about me and why don't we have lunch? We got hammered. So we break the ice right away. And then the friendship began and we were very close. Then his career took him away from where he was at the time when he wrote Kitchen Confidential, which was Leal, a restaurant called Leal. Then he started to travel and do a lot of television, as we know. But when he was back in New York, we were together a lot. And then at one point he asked me to join him sometimes on his trips to have fun, and it was basically like a paid vacation. and we were having great fun on on television, outside the cameras as well. We even had a show called Good and Evil. And I don't tell you who was good and evil because I was not the good one at the end. But we went to 35 cities in the US, in theaters, in real theaters, movie theaters and theaters, and even Las Vegas. I saw my name on a marquee. I was like, oh my God, I made it with Tony. But we were sold out, and it was a show based on improvisation. So we had nothing scripted. We will come on the stage and start to roast each other first. So it was brutal, and I was the first victim, and then it was my turn. And that was the beginning of the show. And we will stay on stage about 2 hours. And people were laughing, hysterical, not because of me, because of him and his humor and because he spoke English. And that friendship lasted until the very end.
The very end. And you have sworn, and I think it's admirable that, I mean, you were there at the end, and you and the crew have vowed not to talk about it, and so
yes,
we're going to honor that, never talk about that. But I just, as you moved on, you know, your own tremendous success, I'm imagining your faith or your practice might have helped. You know, what did you take from him, and how did you turn that corner, this deep friendship? You know, that's tough.
Anthony and I were very different. And I think what made it very attractive to each other is to be so different, but have the same values, universal values about doing the right thing and promoting the right things. Anthony would have hate for me to say love and compassion, and he was like, not about that, but he was practicing love and compassion, and he was, as you have seen him on TV, extremely respectful of other people, of their culture, of everything that was offered to him from the people he was interacting with, which is basically love and compassion. And
I thought of him as almost a minister. You know?
He was an atheist. He didn't believe in anything, and,
No, I know.
and refused to even discuss with me philosophy, Buddhist philosophy.
But I mean,
Made fun of me on TV about that, actually.
but I mean, in the way that he listened to people and he cared about each one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, of course. He will go in Vietnam, in Libya, in Congo. Will be in the middle of the rainforest and be with someone with no education and nothing to offer except a little bit of food, and sometimes not the freshest food. And by respect, he will connect with them, of course, because he was curious, but by respect, he will eat everything that was given to him. I even made fun of him because once he was with the Bushmen, that was part of actually our show Good and Evil. He was with the Bushmen shooting an episode, and he was following them for a week, and they didn't have food, and they were finally going through the bushes in South Africa, and finally found how you call it, the wild boar.
On the wild boar.
It was not a wild boar, but the same kind of animal.
Warthog.
Warthog. What?
Warthog.
So, yes,
Okay.
that was the, and therefore they killed it with an arrow, and then it took them a day or two to bring it back to the tribe, and then they have this big banquet, and Anthony is the guest of honor, and the chef. So they clean the animal very poorly. They cook it halfway. They didn't have enough wood. Anthony is the guest of honor. The team of filming, and they're like, hey, good luck. And then the chief put his hand in the rear of the animal, clean it, and then take a knife, slice the anus, and give it to Anthony as the best piece of the animal. And Anthony, by respect, and he's the guest of honor. He's like, I can't say no. I have to take one for the team. And he ate it. He actually got sick. He ended up in hospital. But I said to him, I said, Anthony, really, at the end of the day, you are with those people, the Bushmen. They have nothing. You come and you're showing off with your cameras and you follow them. And he's giving you the anus of the animal. Have you ever seen any culture in the world that believes that the anus is the best piece of animal?
They were fucking.
I had to give it back to him sometimes.
Well, it's so obvious that you carry him with you too, and as you do all these chefs, everyone you've interacted with, everyone you've taken with you for this phenomenal success. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about your love of seafood and how to do it best. And by the way, to start that, where's Kate Smith? Kate Smith, wave your hand. Why can't they? Oh, she's back there.
Yes.
Kate Smith, whose restaurant is Thistle and Leek in Newton, Massachusetts. Guess where she studied? Le Bernardin with...
3 years, right? Congratulations.
I know you've had a chance to talk, and I asked her, what was that like? What did you learn at Le Bernardin? What did you learn from Eric Ripert? And she said, we didn't follow a recipe. It wasn't about, just following the recipe and getting it right. First of all, the fish is the star on the plate. The seafood is the star. But also, we learned how to cook, which is not following the recipe. We learned how to know for ourselves what the best ingredients were, what it should smell like, what it should taste like. Talk about that.
Yes. I mean, you want the mic? I'm going to do my best. So we have one Le Bernardin, and we have one Le Bernardin and not developed many, many restaurants. And some of my friends have developed 50 restaurants, and I think they would be bored to death if they had one, like me, and I would be dead if I had 50. But I have the mentality of an artisan. I understand business as well, but for me it's very important to have the relationship with the team and one-on-one teach from the knowledge that I have, or the sous chefs, the knowledge that we have accumulated over the years, the cooking wisdom that we have accumulated. It's very important to share. And you cannot share that by giving a recipe and saying, well, measure everything and read the recipe, you will get it. You have to be with your team and explain the reasons and why one day you put more onions than yesterday, and maybe today the garlic is very pungent, maybe yesterday or last week the garlic was not pungent, maybe that tomato is very ripe, but this one is not ripe. So you have to compensate all the time. When you cook at a very high level, it's very, very important to make those distinctions and to go in a very, very tiny details to create a certain consistency and excellency in what you are doing. So at Le Bernardin, I'm not going to give to the cooks the recipe and say, follow the recipe, take the weight of every ingredient. No, we spend the time with them. We explain why the techniques is the right technique for that species that we are preparing. We share through communication, again, a lot of informations that I believe make the difference. Some restaurateurs that have 50 restaurants, they have no choice than to give them a piece of paper with recipes to make sure that it's kind of the same all the time. But even us as artisans, when we share the knowledge and we train someone, we want to be here and at this level of consistency. We tolerate this, but we don't tolerate that.
Go ahead.
So let's say you do a carpaccio, and so you season it properly, and we teach you how to season. Actually, the cover of the book, it's my hands seasoning a piece of fish. And the reason why we're doing that is because a lot of people don't know how to season. Nobody's born with the skills of seasoning, knife skills and so on. You have to learn. And you don't season bang from here. I know, I love Emeril. He's a dear friend. And you don't season too close because then you don't see what you are doing. You season to a certain distance, and so we're teaching that in a book actually. But when you have seasoned your raw fish or cooked fish, if you want to enhance the qualities of that fish, acidity will do the trick. So if you put lemon juice, lime juice, vinegar, anything that is acidic, you are going to create that contrast. But if you do it too early, the acidity, especially of lime and lemons, that is very, very strong, will cook the fish. And if it starts to cook the fish, you will see your fish becoming kind of white, with white spots, dry, and then the acidity kills everything. It kills all the flavors, and then it's like eating cardboard.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll probably end up doing that.
No, I'm sure you won't.
Poached versus steamed. And you give us detail on both.
Poached versus steamed, yes. I like both techniques. And if you poach, I recommend that you create a broth that is a bit thick, we call that a velouté. Velouté is like a rich broth. So you take any liquid. I mean, in the book we have recipes for liquids that taste good, and you can thicken it with starch, cornstarch, potato starch, flour, and you make it thick. That way, when you cook your fish, the juice of the fish will not have the same consistency of water or a broth that is not thick. If it has the same consistency, the fish juice will go into your broth, and you're losing a lot of the flavor, and you're losing a lot of the moisture of the fish. But if it's cooked in that broth, it basically stays inside. And that changed completely the game. And your fish is delicious, juicy, and very appealing too, because he has this kind of shine on top. So that's poaching.
Yeah.
If you don't want to use the flour or the starch and the water and so on, you have a gentle way to cook as well, which is basically steaming. So steaming has the big advantage of having the seafood not in contact with the liquid, and therefore staying very pure, and not you do not alterate the flavors. And steam is fairly gentle. Therefore, by the time the fish is cooked, assuming that you were keeping the fish at room temperature and not out of the fridge right away, in few minutes you will have a delicate kind of skin around the fish that is not too thick and that is not too dry, and the entire fish, when you cut it, is very, very, very moist as well.
I'm sorry, but it's my interview, so I want to ask you a personal question about the casserole of halibut mushroom. It's baked in the oven, but it's in the steamed section. So is that because you make this unbelievable mushroom mix on the stovetop, and then you put that under the halibut, and then it steams it, is when you put it in the oven?
Yes. So what we do, we take mushroom, so different mushroom that we've, depending of the season. But you can go to the market, and whatever inspire you, you bring it back, you cook the mushroom. As soon as you're going to put some salt, you're going to extract some juice from the mushroom, because the salt extract flavors, extract juice all the time. That's one of the quality of the salt. When you will have that juice from the mushroom, then you season your fish and you put it on top of the mushroom and the broth that you have from the mushroom. And it's going to steam because the liquid evaporates slowly. The fish is not completely covered, it's just basically on top. but it's going to be an osmosis in between the mushroom flavor and the earthy flavor, and the fish will capture all that and be cooked very gentle. And it's one of the simplest recipes that you can accomplish. You need one pot, 2 or 3 movements.
I can't wait.
And you have something
beautiful.
delicious.
The stews, your fish stews, are holy. And I'm just wondering, what did you learn from fishermen? Someone's asking, how does your relationship with your farmers and purveyors impact your menu? But I know some of your tips you got, from the fishermen for things like the stews. What did you learn?
For sure. Well, from the right fishermen and the right purveyors and fishmongers, you learn how to find the freshest fish. A lot of chefs and consumers do not know when seafood is fresh or not that fresh. Except when you start to cook at home and it stinks, right? And it breaks in a pan and it's fishy and nobody wants to eat it, and you're frustrated and embarrassed and they're all mad at you. But it's true. But by going to by interacting with fishmongers, by interacting with the fishermen, they teach you how to recognize fresh fish. Like the eyes should be vibrant when you look at it. They shouldn't be like kind of cloudy. When you open the gills, it should be a bright red, not brown. If the fish has been cleaned and there's no more guts inside, you put your nose on top of the stomach and it should smell like high tide, not low tide. And it's many other tricks like that actually we are sharing in the book, because a lot of my friends and people that didn't really know how to cook fish were intimidated, and again had this bad experience of having a stinky house. And I said we have to give all the tricks that I have learned by interacting with at the source, and all the tricks are in the book actually.
Yes,
and it's an homage to all the fishermen and everybody who have helped me to have that knowledge.
Well, one thing that you would sit down maybe after a late night, standing at the refrigerator, not that anyone does that, and eats right out of the refrigerator, but what's something that we might be surprised by?
So I go to bed, I don't eat before I go to bed.
Smart.
But then at 1 o'clock I wake up. And then I have some chorizo and camembert. And it's a little party in the kitchen.
Is that a confessional? Because that is nothing.
It's not a confession because I don't have any guilty trip about it.
I wish that I had those things in my refrigerator to eat at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's more like dry cereal, dry. Ripert, thank you so much,
Thank
much.
you for having me.
The cookbook is stunning, and so are the two of you. Can we please give them? It is such a delight to have you in City High Tide and not Low Tide. Robin, this was probably one of my favorite conversations in City Space of all time. You did a magnificent job. The real test of Robin will be how she takes this hour-long conversation and edits it down for 11 minutes on Here and Now. Look out for that. I confess that I'm actually starving after listening to that conversation. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy lives to be here. I bet you're starving too. I'm happy to report once again that there is fish soup awaiting you. You can begin to smell it. And Chef Ripert's book, Seafood Simple, is awaiting you in the hall. You can purchase them, and they are all signed. Thank you all. Thank those of you.
then there's only separate, connected TV.